Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 1 of D&D Kinda episode commentary. Let's begin with introductions of tonight's panelists. First up, we got Michael.
Hello, everybody. You guys, if you are here, likely know me as your dungeon master, your best friend, and your used car salesman. I'm just kidding. I'm trying to be like Griffin McElroy. I need to cut it out. Uh, yeah. So we're really excited to do this. This is something we talked about actually not for too long. Some kind of spawned out of the middle of nowhere, and we thought it'd be a really good idea trying to kick around a way to make more content in a time that we're still trying to get everyone together. And it's just kind of rough with everyone's schedules, but also gives us a chance to go back and re-listen to some of the things and the stories that we've been telling for the last couple years, and a lot of reflection. And I've done some pre-listening. I've done some um, some reflecting on old notes to try to get ready for this, and just it's helped me with the story. It's helped me in a lot of ways. So I'm hoping we can take that excitement of getting back into the early action that some of us haven't revisited for going on a couple years now, and be able to give that back to you guys. So I'm very excited for this journey, the start of something a little bit new, um, and to be able to give it back to you guys in a new way. So thank you.
Next up, we have Daniel.
Hi, guys. I'm Daniel. You can't see me because I wanted to get this message out there first and foremost. Hamilton sucks. We all know it. But I play Topher, and I made notes for myself because I'm not good at this kind of stuff. Live, anyway. I know I look like I'm being interrogated by a group of hostile insurgents right now, so just bear with me. I'm very nervous. They won't stop staring at me. All right. So I play Topher in D&D, and yeah, like Michael said, this is kind of spawned out of the blue, and we were just all hanging out one night, and I was like, it'd be fun. Let's just live stream everything. And Ryan has been busting his butt to put all this together for us. So big shout out to Ryan, man. You are the real MVP. Ryan Wilfong, that is, not Ryan Turner. I do love you, Ryan Turner, but right now you're not the MVP. Sorry. So one thing that we're going to be doing during this live stream, you can see these things. Let's see which side are they on? Over here, over here. These things right here. Um, these little pause buttons. They're going to be used as a time stop, which is a spell in D&D, and anybody at any point in time can any of us can call time stop, which will pause the episode listening. Yes, right here. You can see it. And give us 2 minutes without the episode playing to where we can speak what's on our minds if we want to talk about anything in the episode or just anything in general, where the other two have to actually just be quiet. So basically, we're going to be using these to shut people up if they're rambling about something. But anyway, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy. I'm excited to do this.
And hi, I'm Ryan. I play Bartholomew in D&D Kinda. And yeah, to resonate Michael and Daniel's expression of joy, it's nice to finally be able to do something. We have a lot of content in the books, and promoting that content and reviewing it, going over what we've done, our journey along the way, and kind of reflecting upon that, I think is gonna kind of really help pave a new road forward too, because there's a lot to learn when you can learn a little bit about yourself. But tonight we're gonna proceed. We're gonna start the episode here shortly, and as Daniel mentioned, we have a number of spells that we can cast. We have 3 time stop spells, and the other little one that you'll see down here on the corner of the screen is called Zone of Truth, and it's a spell in D&D. You've probably seen Bartholomew cast Zone of Truth before. It's basically a way to force someone to say the truth. They can not speak a lie. They can choose to not say much to avoid revealing too much information, but they just can't be deceitful. So as we harken back on some of our intentions as we were initially recording these episodes, this will give us an opportunity to try to find some truths maybe where some might be hidden. So Michael, I'd say we're good to proceed. We can begin episode 1 of the show. Thank you guys for sticking tuned with us here, and let's get going.
I'm sorry, I'm just
All right.
laughing at some of the comments in the chat.
It is good. Yeah. Before we
You
do
guys are
play,
great.
I mean, I do encourage everyone watching. I'm going to reiterate this as it goes on. Feel free to ask questions. Like if you're listening along, you hear something and we didn't talk about something enough, or you want us to dive into something that you heard and where our inspirations were from, or why we're so stupid, or just anything. Just interact in chat is what we're trying to say. We want this to be a commentary, not just on the episode, but with the people who know the show. And I mean, trust me, I know some of the people out there that are listening to this know this show inside and out, and they say things and I'm just like, I don't even remember that, and I wrote the damn thing.
Yeah.
So if you have something you want to talk about, just jump in. So we'll go ahead and hit the play button, and you guys will be able to listen to the show. We're going to listen along, kind of talk about it as we're going, and give our feedback, and hopefully we're not too noisy. Obviously, if you're here to listen to the show for the first time, might not be the best avenue because we're going to be talking over it.
That's right.
But there's tons of places where you can go to get it. So we'll go ahead and I'll hit the play button, and let's just start, and we'll let it flow.
Started playing. The intent was to just play. No podcast, no recording, just fun. I had spent hours crafting a totally unique Dungeons & Dragons campaign intro for these guys, and during that session, they really seemed to dig what I had cooked up. At the end of our first 10-hour session, it was unanimously decided that we wanted
you guys
to
remember
record
that
this,
session?
create a podcast, and share it with everyone.
Barely.
So here we are. I will say at the time
our
we
first-
started recording, I may have
our
been
first
in the
session.
about 3 or 4 months.
Now,
and some party
our
members
first
are
session
actually
was
So for
crafted
SMT,
for a
we broke
birthday
several
party
rules. There is
for
no
a
limit
friend of
to
ours.
D&D.
That's right.
Zach Krim.
This is
The original.
existential stuff. Like this is how it spawned, how it all started.
Yeah, everything, not just D&D, like everything.
Yep.
But yeah, I put together the episode. It was myself, Ryan, Daniel, Jed, and Zach. And then we went to Zach's house and sat around his extremely dirty house and drank and played D&D. It was a nightmare. It really was, but it was a hilarious nightmare. So that's what we're talking about here.
Parts of the
ahead.
nightmare were dreamish, you know.
True.
I harken back to
Especially your
that
face.
night with some spitting laughter of Dayblazer. Blaze the day away. Fucking he brought 2 cases of Dayblazer with him that night. I'd never heard of that beer, and that night it was the first time I drank Dayblazer, and it spawned the D&D kind of experience.
It did.
Yeah. Dude, like, there was so many outtakes from episodes 2 and 3 about, I mean, it was just us yelling Dayblazer, blaze the day. It was a reoccurring thing for that first session that we actually recorded. It was just, I don't even want to talk. Like, we'll get into that the
Yeah.
next episode.
I'm
that we
gonna
do
go
of this,
ahead and
but
cast
man,
time stop. I'm gonna cast time stop
Okay.
here.
400 years.
So we have to get this one. We have to dig into this a little bit. So did Dayblazer? When did Dayblazer end? Like, cause we stopped seeing Jed with Dayblazer, and ever since we stopped seeing Jed with Dayblazer, I think the amount of, let me say this, the amount of Dayblazer that Jed would consume, that Hamilton would consume, is directly proportionally related to how many Eldritch Blasts he's casted.
that's accurate.
Or at least how many
I mean-
times he attempted to cast it, because they weren't always in turn.
Yeah.
Which
You're like,
also
dude,
was
that's-
directly proportionate to how many Dayblazers he drank.
That's true. That's true. Well, anyway, I just wanted to use one of my time stops and just kind of make sure that we have that that method down. And by the way, when I cast it, I lose a time slot. So I only have 2 of
It'd
them
be
left.
gone.
So I'm going to go ahead and release the time stop right now. Whoops. I casted Zone of Truth on accident.
Oh God!
Oh no!
I love you, Ryan.
No, no.
just like Bartholomew, use all of your spell slots immediately.
Look at that, Cody Goldsmith. I just ran through all the episodes for the 3rd time this past month.
Oh,
What
big
an
shout out to
absolute
Cody.
unit.
Yes.
What a
Michael,
G.
time stop's over. We have to hit play.
Yeah, hit
I'm
play,
sorry.
hit play.
My bad.
You're all good. Just letting time meander on. I would do it too if I could.
So, Michael, do you remember recording this first bit? Because what people don't know is that the introduction of each character was recorded like probably 8 months
Way
apart
before
from
everybody else.
the story part of this episode. So,
I
like
think it was
for
8
like
months, but it was a while.
no, it was a while, but for like ever, we had I think episodes 2 and 3 done, and only the first like 12 minutes of this episode. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
good.
Well, like
We're actually
we-
sitting.
There was just such a high level of effort for this episode. Like,
It was.
the amount of effort that goes into 1 minute of this type of podcast is exponentially more. It is insane how much time goes into just making an hour of content at this level. Because this is audiobook
This had-
stuff, you know?
Yeah, this had to be
I
written,
mean-
and this was especially challenging because it wasn't just this part right here. What a lot of people don't know, and there's a definitive break in what Daniel's referring to. So this part, the part about Benedict, the part about Bartholomew, and then Topher's part, all those right at the beginning where it's like really horrific. That part of the story that's just actually horror. It breaks after that, after the dragon attacks Topher's house. That's where it breaks, and that was the first like 12 minutes of content we had for D&D, and it was done for a long time. Because Daniel sat up here at right here where I'm sitting in this exact spot,
Yep.
and we sat and we tried to record as many times as we could. Probably just so many times. But that part itself was written as the intro to the first time that we played. So I
Yeah.
brought that to the session that we just talked about at Zach's house and read that to them, and they were like, "Holy shit, this is fucking dark."
Yeah.
And then obviously, typical D&D fashion, nothing is taken seriously for the
No.
the remainder.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real dark and evil,
No,
and,
if
and
you-
sets a really good vibe, and we're all laughing about it like it's playful and
Yeah.
funny. Heads are getting ripped
Yeah, so,
off,
like,
and we're
just-
laughing asses.
Just to like put in perspective, like me and Michael spent, hours sitting right where he's sitting right now recording this. And I actually sat behind him while he was recording it, and I'd be like, no, try that again, do this differently. And trying to get like that, because once we've never done this before.
Yeah.
None of us had ever done this. So it was like Michael's basically trying to voice act this for the
Yep.
first time doing anything like it. So we're trying to get the mood, trying to make sure that he's
Polish and
emphasizing
not
this-
just get it
Yeah,
down what
yeah.
we want to go, but polish it and make it like
Yeah.
sound like a finalized product. And so there,
Yeah.
how many takes there are with each little section of words. There's 10, 15 minutes behind some of each individual section. And getting that flawless
yeah.
is a high level of effort. And it's what's awesome to me. It shows, like, looking back, I can see how we've grown a lot more. But I also have a high sense of appreciation for where we started. Because it's like, we started off with a pretty high bar. Some people start off with a headset and Windows sound recorder, and that's all they go on. So
Yeah.
when we started off on the right foot, and it just is such a profound sense of affirmation to our efforts that we've come how far we have.
Well,
Can I
the
cast
biggest
time
thing that
stop?
we
Ooh, yes, you
Time stop.
can. I am
Okay, but
pausing it
before-
right
but-
now.
I had a point.
He casted time stop.
boy.
You are muted.
Uh-huh.
So am I.
Well, so
Do I have to stay like
one,
this?
One thing I will say, we'll have plenty of time in the time stop because I want to. This part right here, literally, it is middle of Benedict's name at the introduction. Benedict Blumpkin Patch. Obviously, everyone can. The amount of time that Daniel and I sat as I tried to read this, and if you listen to this closely, you can even hear me trying not to laugh because I'm like, Benedict Blum. Like I could not squeeze out the words without.
We've said his last name so little, I forget about it, and it gets me every time.
Dude, I remember that. Dude, I remember you just like, and yeah, if you pay close attention to it, listen to it a couple times, like really closely whenever he introduces Benedict, and you can tell there's like a twinge in his voice that's just like trying not to laugh. And that was the only
little octave.
Yeah. It's like the only take that we had that was even remotely usable. And I think at that point I was probably just tired of him trying to do it. I'm like, that's good enough. It's fine. Like,
All right, yeah. Go ahead and finish your point though. We'll drive out this time. Stop.
Well, my point was just to I don't know. I look back and I just think we had a huge progression, and then I say a sentiment that's meaningful like that, and then I realize that our players' last names are Blumkin Patch.
right.
It's like
Oh, and something that nobody like. So also, whenever we started this, Hamilton wasn't even supposed to be a character in the campaign.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's why that's why like he became Benedict's brother,
because we didn't know if Jed
Michael
was
had
going to
already
show up
written.
that first night or not.
Yeah. Like he wasn't even like, I mean, imagine it. Like the show had been so much better if he didn't.
All right, Michael, you have to hit resume.
Yeah, resume.
You can even hear me coming off of a laugh right there.
Yeah.
I'm like Benedict Blumkin Patch. Trying not to choke myself out.
Dude, but like no lie, like I mean not trying like I do all the production on the episode, like all of the music, all of the background stuff in this, the screams, I mean everything in this like is original. Like I wrote it all in it. I'm 90, like there was definitely over 80 hours put into the production, just the production, not recording, just producing this episode.
Yeah, you
And
got to
that's
think
not
you're
including
creating the
whenever-
soundscapes. Like you mentioned the screams. I remember you telling a story about this where the sound of the scream was actually just the sound of a cat. You had just
Yes.
recorded the sound of a cat meowing. So you just took that sound, like recorded it with your phone, stretched it around,
no.
did some good stuff with it, and then it ended up being like that banshee scream that really it just gnaws at you, and it's like, God, it's so impressive, man.
Well, I didn't record the cat itself. I found it online, and it's like I don't want to use somebody else's content. You know.
Daniel like with a microphone, like
So
beating
I
a
just-
cat, trying to get.
So I just edited a sound clip of a cat and made that.
Gotcha.
So
I
I
remember
think it's
it
like a
being cat.
reversed
Got it. It was
cat
close at least.
something, and yeah.
I remember when Daniel first sent me this portion of it, because again, this was all done way before. But like, just the juxtaposition, Ryan, if you're watching, the juxtaposition of like the beginning of this episode with how calm and peaceful it was, and then it transitions just quickly into this and this whole scene with like Benedict waking up and these creatures being in his room. And it's so like nerve-wracking. I was listening to this earlier today. I didn't finish the whole thing, but like I got to this part and I was in the car listening, and I was like, this is so gripping, because I used to listen to this all the time, but like
That's all because
nah.
it's all the content we had for like ever.
Yeah.
No, it still gets me. Like it's even right now listening to that, like
Yeah.
it's just terrifying. Dano did a great job.
He really did.
But oddly,
This was my first like, because I've been in music for a long time, but this was my first time doing like, so most of the music that I write is like really atmospheric and stuff, so I like to get that like feeling through the music. But this is my first time doing something really, really dark and actually putting a lot of time into like trying to build a scene around and trying to match what Michael's saying. You know, trying to match that creepiness, that you know, kind of sense of, you know, like unease, especially in this part right here, like whenever he's, you know, in his room and he sees this thing, and trying to get that kind of like almost like him, he's nervous, he's kind of scared, but at the same time he's used to fighting things. So like I wanted something that was a little bit more than just creepy, more than just kind of like give you uneasy, but more like a like he might attack this thing,
Mm-hmm.
if something were to happen. So
I remember writing this too, especially at this part where Benedict is like he just came up out of a dream, and that's why how I wanted it to be. It's like this dream went from so happy to so dark, and then waking up having that momentary refreshing feeling of being awake, and it just being so much worse in the reality of the situation, and the music just carries that like really really well. You just captured that so well. I don't know if you guys
you
can see
feel it.
that-
You can feel the vibe, and like even with no words to it at all, it would already be that can give you that sense. And then with the words into it to paint you a mental picture, and with the feeling, I think it was just really well put together. You guys did a great job on it.
The silence breaks as the
Yep, and
bartender
obviously other
asks
people
for a
thought
glass
so
of
as well.
water.
You see the comment from Cody
Christopher
there.
has no reaction.
Daniel,
He simply
massive
stares ahead of
compliment and
him
shout
on
out
the
to
back
you.
of the chair.
I didn't
yeah.
see it.
People
Sorry,
around
I wasn't
him are
looking at the
gathering
chat.
No,
their
you're fine.
belongings and filtering in and out the door.
This one was a
What seems to
tricky
be
one to
hours
write
pass
because
as the brandy and
something that a
glasses
lot of people don't
become
know is like
water.
Daniel and I
Blaring
worked together on
Christopher's
Topher's
vision is
character,
compensated
far
by the
beyond
mere
where
memories of his
before we
past.
even really started
Filling
playing.
his head.
And there's things that we've talked about that are just starting to show their head in the episodes that we're recording now,
Yeah.
ones that you guys haven't even heard yet.
2 or 3
And-
years
Yep.
later.
Yeah, and Daniel's been so excited for this stuff to come out, to be able to really play this character, and the things that you guys hear and have heard about, and we'll get to those like more later on, but just the little things that are going on with Topher, like, and it was cool because the things that I know about Topher, re-listening as the DM, knowing these things, and even some of the things that Daniel knows that he hasn't come to like the full realization yet, because like even though there's this darkness and mystery around Topher, and Daniel knows ultimately what is quote unquote happening with Topher, he still doesn't know how I'm going to use that and where it's
Yeah.
going to take his character. So seeing, especially when I was listening to this earlier, hearing some of the little tiny details and wording that I used, eventually whenever you guys hopefully finish this campaign out while you're listening and come back to listen to this again, you're going to go, wow, like all the way from episode 1, that one word was just like hitting me right in the face,
Yeah.
and I didn't even fucking realize it. So I got
Dude, like,
really
I've
pumped
been-
about that.
I've been waiting for that for so long, and like one thing, and this kind of ties into what I was going to say, like whenever my scene here starts, like that music, it doesn't transition from like I'm sitting in a bar and I'm just kind of like hanging out, and then it transitions to something darker whenever I get outside and this dragon is there.
Mhm.
It starts where it's dark because I'm in my head, like I'm confused about just my life in general, and I wanted to kind of like push that with the feeling of it behind it. Now, okay, so I may have lied earlier. Some of these sound effects are actually pulled from free sound effects where he's like hitting the tree and stuff. Like I didn't actually make those, but sorry to disappoint. So right here, right there is all that we had for like months. This right here starting was all recorded so
So
much later.
And this was a challenge too, because that, like I said, the other part that you guys just heard all the way up until then was written beforehand. This was all written after we played. So it's really interesting because if you're listening to it, I had taken notes during our first session and cataloged all the events that had happened, and obviously we didn't record that. So whenever I wrote this, it was neat to use this as like a way to. It was difficult to write down, is what I'm saying, because I'm trying to write it in a way that's interesting while still capturing all the specific events of what took place, and then you'll hear me use words like
Perverse.
a charming
And-
effect or an
An individual.
No, stop talking. No. But no, the just words that match a skill check that we would have done. Like I said, there's one where later on it talks about how Bartholomew Bartholomew stands there with an intimidating stance, and it's like I had to write these things in a way that made it not just interesting to listen to, but captured the essence of D&D just by using a few words. So it was kind of a challenge. Also, I get it. I don't have a very robust vocabulary. I'm stupid. Okay.
Yeah, but this
No, we
first part
actually-
was written more like a novel. Like honestly, it was written like a graphic novel. It paints a really good picture for you. It sets a good tone. You were articulate and I want to also say concise because you were speaking to a vibe, and the music also portrays that vibe. And really, they both go really well together. Like stellar audiobook. Sony could have produced this. You would have told me that right to my face. I'd be like, yeah, I believe that. This was done by a major studio. 100%.
Hamilton re-engaged.
So there's actually two versions of this episode too. There's one with these voices changed that you're hearing, and there's one where it's not. And I think me and Michael went back and forth on that for a while of whether we should change the voices, because like we had already been like we'd been
the
playing,
noise.
so we already had our character voices down. So if you tell, I tried to mimic like
Yep.
obviously Hamilton's voice, like the high nasally douchey voice,
and
and the deep voice for Benedict and Bartholomew, and then the kind of like
Benedict knew the occasion.
Hank Hill voice for me.
Benedict rose to
Tried to
his
do
feet
that.
and
Hank
walked
Hill
away.
But, like-
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
The shifting
And
Um,
sometimes you were in the Australia, and sometimes you were in Great
Deep
Britain.
South. Deep South.
Yeah.
But yeah. But
Benedict caught on quickly and realized that what he saw last night may not have just happened to him.
I really, when I was listening to
grabbed
this
his
earlier,
gear,
and
as did
I
Hamilton,
wonder if other
as they
people
rushed
thought
out
this
the
as
door.
well. But I was
Hamilton,
listening to this
confused,
since it's been a while
questioned
since I
his
really
brother
like
as to the reason
paid
for the
attention
urgency.
to it. But
Benedict kept
the
walking into the streets,
the addition of Hamilton, as you said, Ryan,
to the key.
the addition of Hamilton into this being a late addition, having to write him into the story, I liked how it flowed because I don't necessarily think it was intentional. I think it was subconscious how it was like he had no clue what was going on. He didn't wake up for the creatures that were in the room or anything like that. So he was using context clues literally all the way up until the point where it finally clicked with him later on in this episode. I really liked how that actually flowed because I don't think it was intentional. So I'm glad that like, and I don't think that was just me. I think it was just the way that we played it. Because if you guys recall, whenever Zach was playing Benedict, and we'll get more into that later, Zach being Benedict and what'll happen there. But when Zach was playing Benedict, he was extremely, if you guys remember, apprehensive to tell anybody anything when
Oh,
we
yeah.
played.
Yeah.
He wouldn't. Yeah, because we were trying to get him to tell. Essentially, I was almost forcing him to like tell his brother what was happening, and he's like, "No, I don't want to. I'm not going to do that." So I just don't think.
Well,
that's
I
me.
think
So that's-
Zach also had I think he had a character trait. I think he had a
He did.
character trait that was like reluctant to tell the truth or reluctant to speak his feelings or
Yeah.
something to that capacity.
Yeah, so it
So he
it
was
worked
playing
really
his
well 'cause-
character, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I just for someone that had been traveling with him his whole life, it didn't make much sense to me. But
True.
regardless,
They
it
were
was cool how
brothers.
it
I
seemed.
get that. Yep, I really do.
But yeah,
I
then
mean, it-
seeing later, and whenever Hamilton finally it connects with everything that's going on. Also, something else I thought that was cool in the similar vein to that was everyone saw something different. So like Bartholomew, you saw the creature in the sky. Benedict saw the three creatures in the room, which at this point, two of those three things have been called out and identified. And I think even if you pay attention really closely, all three of them have been identified in the course of the campaign.
yeah, they
But
have.
whenever you see each of them, everyone convenes, everyone seems to think everyone saw one thing. And that's one thing a lot of people don't realize about this is that the town themselves, they come together and they say, this horrible thing happened.
Yep.
But then
It
everyone
was common timing.
realistic-
They really thought it was all the same one thing, but it was a bunch of separate things happening at the same time.
Exactly. So I don't know if a lot of people who are, even the people listening now, really picked up on that because it really is. It's not just these events that, or did they have a particular meaning? Because Topher to this point doesn't even know why the Golden Clan Elder was there. Benedict doesn't know why he was there with you. Now, Bartholomew thinks he has a notion as to why those things were there with the scrolls and whatnot, but no one really knows. There's still so many mysteries tying all the way back to episode 1 that still haven't come to light yet.
So I want to cast Time Stop real quick, actually, because there's something
Alright.
that we missed.
The followers of
Um,
Mishpal, I
So, well, there's two things actually. One, we're talking about the voice changes. We actually had a very deep discussion, me and Michael, about bringing everybody in one by one and recording their parts and dumping them in. But we didn't really think that that would flow well since Michael's been narrating that story the whole time of just having our voices in there. That's why we did the voice changing. Another thing, whenever we see Bartholomew for the first time in his room reading the scrolls, and you can hear Michael saying he was reading them and something of palm trees or the sort. I feel like that needs explained, like, because that's like an inside joke, and if you can see, obviously, like, you know, on the screen right now, the time stops covering it, but the 13 Palm Trees podcast productions, that's where that came from, is from the first session. So Ryan, I don't know if you want to take the lead on this because it's your character and like what was going through your mind at that point, and explain like how that came to be.
Well, the messed up part about it, and I'm going to be completely honest with you here. The messed up part about it is that I was drinking Dayblazer. I blame that. But the messed up part about it is
Blazing
that
the day.
because I was learning how to play D&D during our first session. Our first session with this campaign was my first ever night playing Dungeons and Dragons. So having Michael as a DM setting, you know, he had a really awesome story. It set a high expectation. It set a really high bar for, you know, how much creative expression you have in Dungeons and Dragons. There's a lot of creative expression, and Michael set a really good stage for, you know, being able to allow a new character, a new D&D player to explore that. So I just tried to be out of my element, and I tried to think outside the box, and you know, I was learning how to play D&D, and I was told that you know, I was going to go to read these scrolls, and I was told I had to cast for intelligence. So I rolled the dice. I think I rolled the wrong dice first. You know, I probably rolled like a D6 or something, and then I actually rolled the real one, but it was a 2. And you know, it was just like a really bad roll. So then, me being a new D&D player, I was like, okay, well, I have to like take that and be creative with it and say what happened as I roll a 2. I don't want to play D&D where I just go, okay, I rolled a 2. I guess I don't interpret the scrolls. Now let's move on to the next thing. I wanted to play out the events of, you know, what happened in the situation of rolling a 2. So Michael was explaining to me the rules, and in my mind, I was just thinking about something about finding like pine trees. I was like, I got to find a pine tree on some like random day or something. Like, just stumble upon a pine tree and you're like, oh, hey, I found a pine tree. So it came around to me and it was like, okay, so you rolled a 2. What do you do? And I narrated it out, except for some reason when I said it, I said palm trees. And 13 palm trees was just, I said it and I went to take a drink at Dayblazer and someone laughed really hard. And then I laughed really hard with Dayblazer already in my mouth. And thank God it was pre-COVID. Otherwise, that entire room would have been contaminated with anything I had, because I spewed that all over the table, everything that was on there. There was like some books and stuff. I added a little bit to the calamity that was Zach's house, but I realized I went a little bit beyond the time stop. You should have came in and moderated me there.
I think that's an important point that had to be touched on there, because it's not just the foundation of, you know, your character and your -1 to intelligence, because I think you did roll a 3 and it was a -1.
Oh, you're right. It wasn't. It was a nat 3.
And then that really just found, like, when I was like, we should do this more and do more stuff and do like a little business around it.
Yeah.
And it was like, it's got to be called 13 Palm Trees, because
Yeah.
and it's really just one of those things that like no one else really, everyone's like, oh, that's an interesting story, but like when we think about it, like, I wasn't even drinking that night, but I was dead. Like, dead.
It was hilarious. It was hilarious. All right, I'm unpausing the
We
time
can start
stop.
it back up. Yeah.
I am not as familiar with. However, it is with plain
I
sight.
think the first time
I
Michael
can
heard
observe the
Francis's
worth of
voice, he secretly hated it.
Christopher, taken aback by what
I
he
did.
just heard,
I did.
stumbled
And then I realized it's
over,
actually
but
very
no
similar to
avail.
my voice. And
He was
I also
completely
hate myself.
The dwarven woman stood, dusted herself off, and looked around.
I
Word
like
is spreading of the
Francis's
evil
character
that
though,
took hold
especially
in the
like
night.
this far into
And
the
I gather the
campaign.
folks are taking
Knowing what you know
communion
about
from the
Francis,
nobleman as we speak,
listening to this, it gave me a new
demanding an
perspective on the
explanation
character,
as if
because like
that
Francis has
forthwith
been
could
through some
give it.
shit at this
Oh,
up
yeah.
to this point,
You may find
and
them
she knows a
there.
lot of things, and
Pauses.
she's pretty
Then looks
pivotal to the
directly at
story.
Christopher.
But like
She raises
hearing
head
her in this
just
moment,
slightly
you
and
still don't.
squint
There's
her
still a
eyes
lot of
again,
mystique
and her
to the
entire
things that she
demeanor
knows
changes.
and her involvement and things like that, even up to
Or
this
you may
point.
end
And
up
it's
finding yourself
listen,
questioning
that line right
everything you
there.
know.
It's like, why didn't anyone
that,
just be like,
she
okay,
turned,
bitch,
threw
like
her
we're,
cloak
we're
over
gonna,
her
we need
shoulder,
to pin this lady
walked
down to
down
find
the
out what
road
she knows.
into the
This lady's
corner
just like, why don't you
and
go
out
ask
of
the
sight.
nobleman? He might know, or he might
Christopher,
not know
confused,
anything or
turned his
everything
head,
afterwards,
gathered
and
his
just
bag with the
disappears.
last
It's
of
like
his belongings,
everyone's like, yeah, that's
threw
cool,
his
that's
shield
normal
over
in this
his back,
day and
and began
age.
his journey into
What's
town.
you know, like in hindsight, you know, whenever we're all sitting around drinking and having a good time and playing D&D for the first time, some of us for the first time, and this was like my second time
It was
playing
apparent
D&D.
that this panic was
Um,
not just experienced by him,
And
or even just his
you-
immediate neighborhood.
sometimes things don't
Townsfolk
register.
from
Like,
all
should I be
directions
asking
were
these
pouring
questions? Should I
around
be
the
doing
keep,
this? Should I be doing that?
numbering in the thousands.
You know, now, especially
Bartholomew,
with how
being
far
of
we are in this
tremendous
camping
size
and how
and
much
might,
we've actually
managed to
played,
squeeze his way through the
um,
crowds and come out
you can
here
kind
in
of
the
see
front.
things a little bit differently
keep
and be
stood.
like,
Mhm.
and once you get to
massive
really know
ensemble
your
of stone
character and
Yeah.
like, okay,
ramparts and
what would
hallways
Topher really
towering
do
over
in
the
this
crowds.
situation?
I
As
agree with
if
that big
striking
time.
claim
Yep.
to
You
the
know,
city.
it's a
Capitol
progression.
building
Like
never
as you
existed.
play, you
Yeah.
And
you
still,
and your
for all of
character
its glory,
grow,
in this moment,
and
it
you
only
get to know
acted as
more
but a
about your
shore for the
character
waves
and
of
like what
people
he
to
would do,
crash
what he
down on.
wouldn't do.
The
And we'll
townsfolk
get
were
into some of the
screaming
stuff
for
in
an
the next
explanation,
episode
while the
about
guards
my
surrounded
character
the
and how
keep
I
entry
was, you know,
staircase,
certain ways.
shoving back
But
the
like
masses as they
it's
clashed
the way my
against their
character
shields.
Yeah.
would really be.
Yeah.
You know?
Bartholomew did not push.
And
Someone in that
He did not
situation
want
would
to
have
make
certain
himself known.
inclinations, and you
With
playing
it,
that
he
role
thought there must
exhibited
be
those
some connection
inclinations
to these
well.
ancient scrolls
Yeah.
in the darkness
And there's
that seemed to
there's a
steal
lot of
from them
things that
like
like
a
even
plague.
with
He thought it best
Topher
to remain
specifically,
in the
knowing
crowds
that there's
and
more
wait
to him,
amongst the
like
others.
little tiny
Silence.
hints again in this
Yeah.
part where Topher's like sitting there and she starts to touch his
Benedict
shield,
Hamilton
and
nearly
it's
to the
like,
masses,
and he leapt,
arriving amidst
like
the
he
flowing
turned and
crowd.
pivoted and jumped
Those
on top
being
of with
short and
strength he
fast,
knew not
Wolf
he
and
had,
Helm
and I'm just like,
managed
oh,
to
people,
weave their way
you got
cleverly
no
through the
clue
crowd.
what's about to
As they
happen.
approached the
And it's
front,
just,
they did not
it's
advance
cool to
together.
hear these things and see
Hamilton still
how
was inquisitive
they
as
were
to what was
intricately
happening.
weaved in there
He
for
knew his
later,
brother
and I don't
had been there.
remember
It was not often
putting a
Benedict
ton of
was as
effort
troubled
into
as
like
he was.
specifically
For the
recalling
many years
those.
they have walked
So
amongst
like
the living,
it's
they
cool
have
just to think like I
experienced
was
horror
thinking about
few
those
dared to
things in
dream
the
of.
back of my mind while I
What
was
could it
trying
be?
trying to write this out.
Hamilton stayed quiet.
Mhm.
This was tough, man.
Benedict was
I'd spent
pensively
so much
studying
time
the
just
crowd,
sitting here writing this,
waiting,
deleting it, sending it to people.
absorbing
What do you
all the
think? Back and
information
forth.
around him.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't
Especially
any
later on in
control of
this with the
situation.
battle with the suits of armor. That was especially challenging to write out.
Mhm.
So
So I need to
Christopher
cast time
tailed
stop
last of
again
the masses
because there's
as
something
they
that we need to
gathered in the
discuss
remaining spaces
that just
between the
just
buildings.
recently came to our knowledge about
Alright.
Mishkal.
You're good.
oh
It's disclosure
So-
time, is it?
Whenever I started building Topher and figuring out, like, you know, Topher is a cleric. Topher is a human cleric that, for some reason, is devoted to this very old god. So whenever I was doing my research, I was just looking at lists of different gods. Like these are good, these are
Mhm.
bad.
good
You know,
God.
good, evil, neutral, chaotic, you know, all that stuff. So I picked one that was like, I'm a cleric, so I'm a healer, so therefore I picked a god that is, the god of life and, you know, all that happy stuff. But it didn't say goddess. So therefore I just assumed, and we all
Did you
assumed
assume my gender?
that Mishkal was a man. Which Mishkal is not a man, but this is also why we call this D&D kinda.
It's only
Um,
kind of right. Just
you
our
know,
gods
like,
are wrong.
it-
No big deal.
Yeah. But that's just one thing that, like, literally I was just curious the other day. I wanted to look up a little bit more about Mishkal because right now where we're at in the campaign, it's going to become like a very big
Yeah.
part of stuff because we're getting into, you know, Topher. We're really getting into Topher. And I just looked and it was just like Mishkal. Here's a picture. It's a woman. I'm like, wow, we're like 50 episodes in. Like, we can't get, how do we backtrack this?
Maybe
Like,
that's the reason she hasn't listened to you at all.
that's fair.
Oh man.
All right. Yeah. I just needed to get that out there because
That was the only
know,
time stop that lasted perfectly 2 minutes. Michael, it's at play.
yeah.
Surrounding the
Oh,
nobleman.
I cast it down the truth. Dang it.
Christopher, being unable to tell,
Just clicked the wrong button there.
ducked in behind the crowd, skirted across the edge of the building to his back, climbed the gated wall leading to the keep, and now, towering over the crowds, walked along the raised pathway, giving him the vantage point, and allowing him to
So
make it to the
right
crowd's
in
edge.
this area,
Christopher
like
leaped off the edge and caught himself on the wall
the
side
gate
with his
sound,
hand, let
Mhm.
go, and slid down
Um,
the lower rocky ledge.
that's a really funny story because at that point I was living with Jed and I
Ew.
couldn't find
An
a sound
unease took a
effect
hold of Christopher as he felt a sickness
that
grow from within the crowd.
really like that and
The guard
the
formation
chain
shifted,
sound
and
of
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the chain
sharply
going
around
up.
the basin of the stairwell.
Those
Shield to shield
were
they stood,
recorded
Nice.
locked and ready for the
with
crowd.
I think
There was
like
a
little
loud
glass,
like the tightening of chains,
that right
shocked
there.
and silenced the air.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
little glass candle holders and like rifle bullet casings
Four large
Nice.
guards,
in
Oh,
the
nice.
closet of my
shining
room.
silver
I was
armor from
recording
head
it
to
while
toe,
Jed was in there
marched
just
out,
clanging
and
shit
between
around,
them stood the
just
nobleman,
smacking stuff together and
elegantly
recording
dressed
just a bunch of
with a
random
deep
sounds.
blue sheen cloak
And
flowing from his shoulders,
like, we
originating
spent
from his
so
breastplate.
long
That's
just
great.
It's so
recording.
weird to
Listened
hear
the
Jed
sunlight,
being
and the
useful. I
emblem
just
on
don't
his chest
understand.
had small white fractals of light across
No,
the
dude, he
faces
was
of the
really
crowd.
into it, man. Like he was
Bartholomew
totally
could see
like
it
he just
clear
came in.
as
He's like,
day.
"What do you need, man?" He's like,
The
"Let me go
emblem
find some stuff." He just
never
brought in like
wavered.
random
This
stuff, and I'm just like,
breastplate was
just
handed down to
we'll
the
just put a
keeper of the
microphone in
city,
there and just
as
smack
it
a
is
bunch of stuff
brilliant
together,
sign
man.
of
Just
power
like,
and
That's
respect.
hilarious.
like
A deep blue shield
so.
chiseled in the center of the breastplate.
And I think what I did with the
circles of
chain
pure
sound, I
ruby
just took
set
one
in
of
a
those sounds that we
triangular
got
pattern within.
and just
In each of these
like
circles
put them
rested the
side by
snowflakes
side
of
with a little bit of
Neverland,
space in between of
trapped
them,
within the
in
ruby
between them, so
prison.
it sounded like
The chestplate symbolizes the story
like,
of
so
an
it
ancient
sounded.
pirate
I'm like, this is the
vessel
closest I
that
get to a
deep
chain
under the
sound.
hot
Nice.
Atlantic,
It works
to
fine,
which the
whatever,
great
you know.
Neverwinter
Nice.
River
Yeah,
flows.
so
It is
I thought it was
said
just
that
kind
the
of a
elementals
cool-
live to
That
imbue
is.
the
That's
water
cool,
badass.
like
with
behind the
magic,
scenes
which
of
causes
the
the
type of
great
stuff
Yeah,
that we
in
did
the
to
making.
finish this episode.
and bring
You know,
life
look at
to
these
the
these
growth
episode
of all
commentaries are
different
filled with
fronts.
everything from
The
you
great
know
city of
Yep.
Neverland
story
remains
design,
from this
from
night.
audio
The
engineering,
story of
and
its birth
and
lives on in
methods.
this eloquent
This is
sigil.
awesome.
The
Whenever I
nobleman raised
wrote
his right hand
the
in
part
relief.
about
He flattened
whenever
his
you
palm
guys were
and
all
began to lower it,
approaching
as
the
if in
keep,
attempt to
Mhm.
quell the crowd.
whenever because I was like, it's
Christopher
not really that
Dorian watched
interesting,
as
but
the
I need
crowd
to
was
like
unresponsive
everyone
to
needs to have a different approach to
However, there
this.
was something
So it's cool
else
whenever I
his
wrote
keen
it to like
perception lent way
have to
The
take
nobleman
into
seemed
account
not
like
hurried for an
not just
explanation
how
of
they
his
got
rhyme,
there, but
but
like
he almost seemed
what the
nervous
after
or at an
effects of
unease.
the actions you guys
Perhaps he
actually
was troubled by
took,
this great
how
beast as well.
those would be best
Christopher
framed.
pondered.
I think that was probably one of the most difficult parts when I was writing this because I was like, okay, well, obviously we
The
know
nobleman yelled,
what happens with the dwarven woman and Topher approaching her, what happens, how Bartholomew kind of interjects himself into that process, and how Benedict and Hamilton were just kind of watching from afar. So writing the approach with Topher actually circling, I love listening to that because it frames the story really well of him, but he climbs the wall and then jumps down the wall and scales it, and then finds a place where he's high up enough but not too high to make himself like too known or to be able to be seen really easily. I just thought it was cool re-listening and seeing how that actually came out in the episode. I really liked
Yeah.
it.
and quickly assessed that
Nice.
something happened.
It's something really small that you'd pass over really just generically, but having written it and re-listening to it, I'm like, oh wow, that was it. We did a really good job with that.
Nice.
Yeah.
The bodies of
Yeah,
the
how you
crowd
took
slammed against the shields of the
what
guards
we
as the
played
nobleman spoke,
And how long
and
we
were repelled
played
like water on rocks.
that night at Zach's and condensed it down to like
Bearing no weakness,
35 minutes of
Bartholomew
content.
stilled himself,
And there's some
steadfast
things that
as
didn't
a
even
mountain,
make this,
moved forward
like
and
Mhm.
backwards,
like Zach's
a
whole
steady wave.
transforming into a baboon and just being an asshole for like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
remember that because that actually
Yeah.
happened in
That did happen.
episode 2 that didn't make the final cut
Yeah.
because episode
Smell of
we'll get into it next
Mm-hmm.
episode, but you know,
As the masses
just giving you
clamored,
guys reasons to
Benedict
come back
stood,
and watch the next
glaring
one.
at the
Yeah, and
crowd.
thinking about
But-
this, I've never thought about it this way, but every single one of these episodes is basically a night when all of us hang out.
Equally as daunting.
So, you know, there's other things that happen that night between breaks that we're going to likely recall too as we listen to these episodes. We're basically, you know, reminiscing on those nights and those memories.
Mhm.
Just big enough for the
Yeah, whenever we do episode 2, Ryan, you're gonna have to get those videos, those things that popped up in your phone from
Yeah.
the first session.
Yeah, I can do that.
So we can post them to D&D so everybody can see how Jed showed up
Hmm.
to that.
That's great.
That session.
That's a great idea.
And
So,
moved slowly
yeah.
towards the opening he had spotted.
So where are we at right now? What's
Not
happening?
wanting his chance at the nobleman to be stolen,
Hmm.
reached forward to grab the hooded figure, but Hamilton grabbed his arm and cautioned him against proceeding. Hamilton settled Benedict and urged him to watch what was about to transpire.
I liked it. So when I was listening to this too, I was trying to like think about how the characters are playing now versus how they are presented in episode 1. And I think that this one was the most interesting to correlate just because like you hear like Benedict right now is like slowly approaching, trying to get his chance to like figure out and get his answers, which is pretty close to how he normally is. But then Hamilton's the one there like holding him back. Be like, yo, hold on, like we probably shouldn't do that. And I was like, it was tough because I was like, I don't know how that would happen, but also I keep remembering in this moment that Hamilton still doesn't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's cool to think about like if, especially putting Jed in that situation, because Jed's just the type of person, he likes to be involved. He likes to know things. He's very intelligent, and so like putting him in that situation, I can just imagine Jed and Josh like literally in that crowd, and Josh being like, I'm gonna get in there, that guy up, and Jed being like, hold on, like we need to talk. Like, tell me what's going.
Yeah.
The knight approached the
That's very
figure,
true.
And as he did, he reached
know?
out and pulled the cloak from its head. It was a simple dwarven woman. She had brown hair
Also,
that was matted together.
I know I knew
Her
what was
cheeks
gonna
were red
happen,
and
but
soaked with
re-listening to
tears,
this
and her
small
eyes
portion
told
with
a
the
story of
dwarven
a life
woman,
the
and
guard had no
this was
business
heavy.
hearing.
Like this was really heavy.
Yeah, this
Oh
is.
yeah.
Back to the crowd.
Also,
Or you will
what
be
really
back
confused
fully
me,
enough, the nobleman interrupted.
because like I don't remember much about that first session, like actually whenever we played it.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I was editing this, like
The nobleman approached the stairs and he began to
whenever
descend.
Topher wakes up,
The crowds were quelled for the moment
there's a
and
small
watched intently.
dwarven woman, and then here there's a small dwarven woman, and for the longest time I thought it was the same person, and it was some kind of trick. But as we furthered in, playing, I understood that it was who it was and what had happened. But for the longest time that confused me a little bit.
My lord, if what we
Oh.
saw in the night
This voice.
was nothing more than a fool's errand, a prank, or simply a trick of the mind,
Sniffle.
please
Sniffle.
explain
Your
this to
sniffle.
me.
And at
She
this
was
moment,
sad. That was
she
good.
curved her arm
I
and
like
lowered
from
what
this
she was
part on,
carrying
it's
in
just
both
it is.
hands
It's like
to one,
gut wrenching.
and used the
Like when I
other
listened
hand
to this
rip the
earlier, it was
tattered cloth from atop,
brutal.
revealing the body of a small child,
Bald is not beautiful.
mangled,
I'm sorry.
nearly unrecognizable.
Sorry, I'm reading the chat.
The parts of the child's
I
body
mean,
were
if
either
you're bald, you're
displaced
beautiful,
or
but
entirely
Jed's
missing.
Jed's bald is not
The skin
beautiful.
was torn in many places as blood still poured
Or he's
from the
bald by
body
choice.
and had soaked the rags that the woman
Oh,
wore.
okay, well, yeah.
At this, the nobleman retched and turned
can have some of
and
my
began to
hair.
heave heavily as he tripped over
Retched.
himself, attempting to climb the stairs.
Just
dwarven
everyone
woman fell to her
everyone
knees
listening to this and being
almost
part of
with
this, I
reverence
want you
laid the
to,
body of her broken
if this is the only
child on
time,
the stairs.
maybe the next time, that we're gonna visit the keep, that I'm happy about it.
Who had
Because
already
I don't
fallen
ever,
gracefully in
I don't
full
ever want to come back to this fucking building in the
Seeing what
course of this
happened,
campaign. We've been back to the keep like 20 times,
began to
and
run
nothing
around,
ever
making his
happens
way
here.
towards the woman. Fighting
Things
the
just
mass
go
attempted
wrong.
to get away.
Chrysalix gets
Christopher
shot.
was too late. Amidst the passing
Well, think
figures,
about it.
he
It's
saw
funny
her
because,
on
like
the
I said,
stairs.
everything,
Her
nothing
hand
ever
reached behind
good
her back,
happens here.
and slowly she
At the
brandished
know.
next
a large
part,
dagger.
Francis comes out and she's like, "These are unholy, evil grounds, and we can't do this here." And it's just like every time you guys are here, stuff bad happens.
Christopher had arrived only to see
Not
the
like-
dagger dance with purpose over her
Almost
neck.
like
keep-
enemies and stuff get better rolls here. Almost like things
She fell
here.
on her side.
just don't go in your
So are you saying that you stack the dice
Who caught her in his arms.
whenever we're at the keep?
He listened.
No, I'm just saying you guys have always had shit rolls.
Well,
Whatever was
Dude, for
remaining
like
of
the
crowd
first-
quickly began to
I don't
disperse.
even know, like probably 10 episodes that we have, dude. I couldn't roll. My
Rushed
dice
to
were
the
just
top of the stairs and
garbage.
disappeared behind the large
Yeah,
iron
we need to
door.
get a dice jail.
Bartholomew,
Just for you.
standing unmoved
Just
at
for
what he
me.
saw.
I would
You
never
stay in
be
there
out
and
of
think
it.
about what you've done.
He noticed the human man who was still hunched over the body of the dwarven woman, speaking what he could only assume.
Can't
be
wait
a
to
sort of
revisit some of these
incoherent
things and
prayer
later
of the
on and
woman's
harken
body.
back to
Bartholomew noticed
some
the
more of this.
shimmering blue infinity
Yeah.
symbol on the shield resting on the man's back, the symbol of Mishkal. He was a holy man, a man of the faith, a cleric. Bartholomew,
It's
being
me.
a paladin himself, extended an arm and placed it on Christopher's shoulder and spoke.
This is where we met, isn't
My
it,
brother,
Ryan?
your prayers will not go unheard. Let us seek her final resting place.
Christopher blinked, and again.
I actually really like that voice edit
then
that I did
blinked
with your
again.
voice. It's just like so deep and
quickly,
just like
as if he were lost in the moment.
comforting, you know?
Yeah, well, then you hear Benedict talk, and you're like, "That's also deep." It's like you just toned it
Thank
down
you.
just a little bit
The
more.
creature that did this
Listen,
to her
listen.
child
There's only so much you
attacked
can
me in
do
the night.
whenever you're taking one
Or
person's
I
voice and trying to
destroyed
make
my
it sound
home.
like 10 different people.
And now families suffer. This is evil.
Very
we have
tough.
not seen the likes of in
I
ages.
did at this part right here where they're
Bartholomew
talking.
replied.
This is where
Praises to your good
he
health.
says, "I saw
Saw it.
something.
I did as
I
well.
saw something in the night," and then even
A low,
Benedict
raspy voice spoke from
chimes
beneath.
in and is like, "It was
As
in
did
my
I,
house too."
Only it was not in
Yeah.
the moonlight.
And then
It was in my
there's
very home.
no conversation,
My
even
home.
whenever this happened.
Bartholomew
Even though
and
you guys
Christopher turned
knew
quickly to
that
see
it
a
wasn't the
dwarf,
same, you guys
tall
did a
in
really good
stature,
job of not
and a
like
gnome standing
diving
next to him.
into it in that moment
The
whenever
dwarf
you guys were
continued
playing.
speaking.
Yeah.
So
My brother Hamilton and I traveled
Yeah, I
the world
think
in search
did
of
we
the
ever get
fowls
into
to
that like later in
Stare
this
death
session,
in
or
its
was it
face.
just like
But I assure
I don't
you,
think so.
no, I think
we
every
were dead
and I
and
like that
gone.
because I think in real life that's how it would have been. You guys all would have
Yeah.
just assumed it was the same thing that
Yeah,
happened.
it's not like we would have
Yeah.
fact checked further than that. Like, what time did it show up? What did it look like? Did it have there was these sort of behaviors and traits? Was that comparable to my experience? Maybe it's not. Maybe we can extrapolate more data. No, we didn't do any of that. We're like, oh, it's definitely the same thing. Let's move on.
They were
Yeah.
on us in our sleep. We live only because it is their will.
The
I
thought of
love-
those words disgusted him.
I love that because like putting
four of them stood in
especially
silence
Jed
for
and
a moment,
Josh as people,
and then,
not just
moments later,
Benedict and Topher in a
doors
situation
began
where
to
it's like,
open again.
by the way, you're only alive
stream of
because this
guards
person
carrying
said you're
various
alive,
bottles,
especially Josh.
and other
Like-
items came
Yeah.
streaming down the stairs.
yeah.
By the order of the
Well, you got to
Legion of
take it into
Neverwinter,
like, you know,
relinquish the body of the woman.
at this point in time it was Zach.
Christopher, still holding
No,
the
right.
weapon
I
in his
just
arms.
Yeah.
but like
But, yeah,
even
yeah.
even from the standpoint of like their characters, like I like that dichotomy because like if Bartholomew had been attacked, he even though he was like paralyzed, he at least had eyes and may have been able to ran. You did too. You put up a fight, but those two like mentally acknowledging the fact that these creatures had us. Like they're all we're literally only here because they didn't kill us and they wanted us to know that they were there.
Yeah.
Like I really liked how that
Yep.
came out.
It
in
was
this episode.
eerie because it was almost like we were chosen. And there wasn't any clear thing about what we were chosen for or anything like that, but we're just chosen to be visited. And all we're left with are these hazy memories of that night to go on. And at the same time discovering who we as characters were. It was a journey, man. And you know, you put yourself in that role, it can be you can like method actors, you know, who they take the role and they really just become that a little bit. We do that to a degree because you know we try to play these characters and try to play the role that they would be in.
The dwarven lady from
Yeah.
earlier that
Yeah,
morning.
for sure. Especially you, Ryan.
You
Like,
know my
there's
name,
been times where we're just like, "Hey, do you want to sync up and do this?" And you're just like, "I just can't get in the headspace. Like, I can't connect." It's
There's
almost
times,
like you're
yeah.
bringing
Mhm.
another person out of you. You're like, "I just can't connect to that Bartholomew tonight. Sorry, man." Like,
Yeah.
And I assure you
It's
that
like
makes
whenever we
these
go to
are only the beginning.
whenever we go to
There is
record,
reason and cause for all of
um,
you to be here,
I
but I cannot speak of it
always
in this
right
place.
before, like while I'm
Great
driving
evil plagues these
to wherever
grounds.
we're
She looked to the
recording,
ground.
or you know, a couple
Eyes
hours
and
beforehand,
ears
I
of the
always
unseen.
intently listen to that
Can I
previous
convince you
episode,
find
even if it
Yeah.
hasn't been released
See you
yet,
later for a
because
drink.
it's
That's
such
really
a good
helpful.
way
She
to
looked
get
at them.
back into that headspace
Stood
because
quiet
you
for a
you
moment,
you remember
and then
things that you were
Christopher spoke.
thinking whenever
Brandy's
like this
maid,
happened or that happened,
Locked
and
down
you know,
from the Swordsmith,
100%.
Neverwinter, after
You know,
sundown.
so-
yeah.
I will be
Speaking
there.
of like
The
headspace,
dwarven woman looked
I
around at
liked.
the rest.
I don't know if you guys caught on to this or if you've
Ribbon,
ever
count me in.
really
Hamilton
jumped
belted.
into it, but
Growl came from
actually, I'm
Bartholomew.
gonna cast
I,
time stop
Benedict
right here.
nodded.
Brandy's maid.
Just because it's a little bit of a point, just specifically about
Brandy's
where we're
Main?
at, where they talk about Brandy's Main, they talk about that's where they're gonna go to meet up, then that's where Topher's journey like started, and it's funny because if you look at that beginning, it almost seems like Topher's like an alcoholic, like he's there to just drown out the thoughts and things that he has, but it knowing what everyone knows about Topher, and it's not a spoiler because again you shouldn't be listening to this, you know, if this is your first time on the show.
Yeah.
If it is,
No doubt.
pause this, watch it later.
Yeah,
Go
if
back.
it is, Alt F4.
Yeah. But like Topher at the beginning starts and he's drinking and everyone's like, does Topher, like, at the beginning, does he have a drinking problem? Is he there drowning his thoughts? But then you find out that he lost his memory completely. So it's like at that moment, it's really cool to think about, especially when I listened to this today again. What was he tossing with?
Yeah.
Like, what is Topher really struggling with in that moment? And it's really never talked about. But now, where we're at in the campaign, really thinking about Topher struggles with a lot of things, but he doesn't even know what it is that he struggles with. So it's like
Yeah.
thinking about that existential
Yeah.
like crisis that Topher was having in that bar, where he's like, I cannot piece together what I'm thinking, and I can't even comprehend why I feel the way that I feel. And it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and
And then-
mentally for Topher, that has to be draining, because
Mhm,
honestly, knowing your past and knowing what bad things you might have done, at least you have an expectation of what to deal with. Not knowing it, you may consider all possibilities and experience what that possibility would have felt like, and that
Yeah.
has to be mentally draining.
Yeah. Me just trying to search. And maybe he was drinking to try to remember. Maybe, you know, it would unlock something, and he's just,
Yeah,
you know, Topher's just, I mean, you got to think like he's only had a memory for a couple of years at this point where this whole story begins. So
there's a lot
anything
you-
before that,
It is.
there's a lot you can
Yeah.
unpack
Before the
there.
woman turned, and as
Yeah.
she began to walk
wanna cast
Can I
away,
Stop.
cast? I want to cast Zone
Oh,
of
no, I've
Truth
got-
on Daniel.
okay.
All right,
All right.
you're live
So-
with Zone of Truth.
So, well, should I ask first,
me.
and then you can start? That way, I can
Yeah,
give
yeah,
him
yeah. Yep, you give him
Okay.
full 2 minutes to answer. That's fine.
All right. So, as Topher, without giving away too many details to the audience, what was it like for you to have to play a character where there was very, very little backstory, and having to craft a personality around something that you didn't even know fully? Because a lot of even your present backstory wasn't determined until later episodes, where we had delved into that and we role played those as well. So again, which is really difficult to write too, because I'm like trying to make sure that there's no little tiny details that are overlooked. But what was that like for you to not have that experience? Because you know you have Benedict and Hamilton, who had like the father that they chased, and that really turned them into little dickhead warriors that they were. And then you had Bartholomew with this past that he very clearly and defined and wrote out. And then you just had this, I woke up. So it's
Yeah.
like, it's cool to see your character like this. So what was it like for you trying to grasp how to play that?
It was, I mean, obviously me and you have discussed a lot of, you know, my story, not really my story per se, because I left that in your hands because I don't, as Topher, want to know certain things. But there are certain things that I know as Daniel that Topher doesn't know. So really, like, playing a character that has no memory is really honestly kind of just playing to the people around him and just what he knows from those short years. Like, he knows that he woke up. We still haven't at all yet figured out how he came to be a follower of Mishkal. It's hinted at whenever he meets Chrysalix, but nothing was really stated about him following Mishkal. So just from that like little bit, it's more of a kind of like learned like experience almost. Like, I'm going through this campaign and like in the moment, since I don't know from my backstory, I know that there is good inside of me, but there's also something that's dark inside of me, but I don't know what those are. So it's like we'll just reference episode 2, like the whole horse deal. In episode 2, it's like I suggested something about horses. But then whenever it came time to do it, it was like, no, I don't think we should do this.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, you know,
Hey, there's some
even
horses
those, like,
over there.
little
Let's
things-
not steal them.
Yeah. It's like, it's honestly hard because knowing what I know about the little bit that I know about Topher and trying not to play too much into that part of it without, like, because I don't want to give anything away until we get to that climax. and just really like trying to play as a good, but there's also something that's a little bit not good with him. It's, you know, in like a full session, it's not as hard really, because you have time to think and time to really kind of plan it out. But I don't know. It's it's nice partly because I don't have anything to fall back on and I can just kind of be free with my character and sticking within those parameters that I know that Topher is a cleric. He is good, but there's also something dark. So I get that freedom of not having to really stick to any kind of like, I have to be this way because that's how my character was built and this is my backstory. So I really just have the freedom to take it whichever way I want to, but I don't want to overdo it, good or bad, you know? I don't know.
That was a
It's a very
good zone
tough
of
question.
truth. That was a good zone of truth.
I've never thought about that, honestly. Like, it just kind of comes naturally whenever I play Topher. It's like, would I do this or should I do this based on what people already know about me?
Yeah,
You know?
and that's the reason I've asked, because I always felt like there's a really fine line that you have to walk as that
Yeah.
character. It's like, because you know, as Daniel, what's next, you sort of, but Topher
Yeah.
doesn't, and Topher's just as confused, and that's why I was commenting on that before. It was very refreshing to see that come out in the story, where it's like Topher's here and he's mentally anguished and he's drinking to try to forget, but like, what does he have to forget? And like, as you just discover more of the story and then you go back and hear that, you're just like, wow, like that. There's a lot of complexity to this character. So you've done a great job playing it. So
Yeah.
And there is one thing.
Christopher took a step.
One
ahead.
thing. No, go. You can play it. It's not going to take long.
Wait,
There's one thing in an
how did
episode,
you know?
Eyes and
one
ears, my
line
child.
that I say
Turned back to
that I
answer.
purposely left
With a
in
subtle movement, motioned her hand
to
upwards towards the keep wall.
give a slight
Christopher
hint.
followed with his eyes, and in the window,
And
near
I
the
don't-
top of the keep,
I'm not going to say what episode it is or what I say, but in one single episode, there's
Christopher looked
there's
back at the woman, but she was gone as well.
just a line
Turned back
of something
and
that I
slowly
say
approached Bartholomew,
that we're just
then
now
making
getting
it
to
Hamilton.
that
Isn't it
will
odd,
give
she said.
it won't give anything
For us,
away, but there's a
Christopher muttered.
hint to
Would seem we all have
what
commonalities.
Topher's what I know about Topher anyway.
Nice.
So
This place,
everyone listening's like, great, now I gotta go listen to this whole thing all over
Don't
again.
worry.
Well, they're going to
Write down
anyway. Now
every
they just
line.
know they need to look for a little extra thing.
there's well, it'll be in the previously on for the not the next episode, but the following episode.
No, don't say
So-
that.
Benedict shared of the
Nice.
No, it
Oh,
will
well, at
be.
that point, I guess it won't
Because
matter.
people are gonna hear it, you know,
Mhm.
and at that point. So
Bartholomew, pondering what he had just heard, spoke.
my studies, I could not interpret all
Here
of
it
what I
comes.
was reading. Perhaps there was some significance to these writings. It is possible that I awoke
I also
these
didn't
creatures
record
with a
those screams in the
spell that I
background.
released
those were
unknowingly.
definitely a free
The thought made him sick,
copyright free
for
thing.
He could feel
Nice.
the evil in the night.
That's just
Because-
something that would be
As he delved
difficult to
deeper into
grab,
his
though.
study.
No,
Yeah.
no
You
doubt.
live near,
Gotta use all
I would
everything
like
I'm
we
not
to
gonna-
see
can.
what it is you are referencing.
Well, I
I'm
remember
not
when I
gonna
was
release.
I was doing
Delta
the
Benedict.
Hellblade
And
Senua
with this,
Sacrifice
Benedict, his
episode of
brother,
Video Game
and
Mythos. In the
Christopher
beginning
followed
of that,
Bartholomew back to his
there's
abode.
like hundreds of
The sun
voices
began to
that
fall
are just
from the
repeating
skies
different
and broke.
phrases, and I just had to
Bartholomew pushed
the
open
logic
door of
file
his
for that
study,
was like
and the four of
75
them
tracks,
came
and I was
walking
like,
into the
oh
room.
my god,
Papers
this
lay
is
across the
it
table,
sounded great. So
scattered with
Oh, it
symbols
sounded
that were
awesome.
unrecognizable
You guys should
to
see
any
the
of them.
logic track file
Each
for
began
this
to look at the
episode.
papers.
Oh,
I
I
think
bet.
there's over
Tried to
100.
decipher
Yeah.
I think there's like
Yeah.
150 plus
Ancient
tracks in it. It's
Draconic,
absurd.
Nice.
Hamilton
Wow.
said softly as he
So-
rummaged
and
through
that's
the piece of
after I
paper.
condensed Michael's voice track with all the different
Mhm.
voices down into
Mhm.
one
Bartholomew
single track
objected.
Nice.
to give me more
I know
space.
the likes
Dang.
of Dragonborn text. This writing predates Dragonborn history altogether.
A strange dialect, of course,
Hamilton continued.
I love this because
but
it's just like,
Dragonborn nonetheless.
is it Hamilton's just like,
Bartholomew picked up
shut the
text
fuck up,
and
Bart.
attempted to
Yeah.
reflect
You're
the
wrong.
early days of studying, but the text
Doesn't matter
I
what
like
you think.
list.
Well, I'm pretty sure that was a
Anything of
check
discernible
that you had
knowledge.
done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
and
it
you
is.
did
100%.
poorly, and
Of the
Hamilton
sort.
was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna
If there
do
was
it, and
any
did it
knowledge
better.
we gained
You're
from
really
these writing
right.
Papers, then it would not be found at the hands
I like
of these
re-listening
four.
to this too because knowing what we know
Time
about
passed and the
the
sky
connection
darkened.
between
Benedict stood
Francis
gazing
and
over the city
Benedict,
top from Bartholomew's
and
study window.
her knowing that,
The sound of
obviously,
the incomprehensible
but not
words
saying
uttered by
anything.
the beast
Yeah,
echoed
and
You know,
we
knowing the
ears.
connection.
we see this now in a new
Brother.
light.
Let us go.
Yeah.
I have a drink waiting on me at the Brandy's Main.
Hamilton was already on his way out the door. as
Hamilton's
Benedict brushed
drinking
off the
problems
stops and followed
causes
Bartholomew and Christopher out the
causing him
door
to
and on their
literally.
way to the Brandy's
That's
Main.
another thing. He literally almost
The sun was
died
slipping
in this
behind the mountains
episode.
to the
Like,
west, creating enough light to
You know what's
carry
also
the
crazy
I'm
to
taking
think
down
about?
questions from people,
and
so
the
we'll
end of
get
the
to those
road
at the
holding
end.
the
So.
Brandy's Main.
Okay.
Nice.
So
As the four of them
another thing
approached
it's
the
like
bar, Christopher
that's
noticed
crazy
something
to
out of
think
place.
is like
Two
the
suits of
bartender
armor,
in
unoccupied,
this
standing
episode
inside the
that
entrance to
Hamilton
Brandy's
swindles
Main on both sides.
out of money has become such a
Christopher
big
frequented
part
this
of the
place,
campaign.
and this was a new addition.
Like it's something
Not
that
thinking
is
anything
just
of it,
like
Hamilton
it's
passed
Gwent.
Christopher and
Like,
walked
and we
towards
don't
the
think
door.
about that whenever we listen to this
Smell of
episode. At least
fresh
I
ale,
don't
jolly
until
music,
just
and
now.
laughter
It's
filled
like,
the
man,
air.
that's
And
Gwent.
just as Hamilton
Every
pushed
time
forward
you
for
guys
the
fuck
door,
with this
there
guy,
was
I'm
a
just
stabbing
like, this
pain in
dude
his
has
shoulder.
literally never
Hamilton
done
blinked.
anything to
He
Sent him to
did.
another
We,
plane of existence.
I think
Dark
all of
metal
us are
arm
acting
holding
on
the
him as if he is the actual card game from the what's that game? The Witcher.
Is it The
Yeah,
Witcher?
no one likes that card game. So no one likes
Gwent.
Gwent.
At the end of the sword that rivaled his own height, brandished his scimitar
Oh,
through
man.
the air, and as he swung, was bashed in the side,
Oh,
hit the
man.
ground, and rolled across
This
the
was
dirt.
fun to write
He
too,
spat.
because I was like, I get the
Blood and dirt
opportunity,
were
because like
splattered on the ground
this
next to
battle
him.
was difficult. I don't know
As
if you
his
guys
eyes raised, he
remembered
saw
Oh,
his
this.
yeah.
brother looking at
So-
him
Like we almost died.
covered in blood.
Well, that's
With
the
a
reason in this I
died.
started it with Hamilton like
Christopher,
dying
holding his
essentially,
shield, grabbed
and then
Hamilton
you
and pulled
well
him
not
back
dying, but
behind
like
the
he
shield.
got
And all at
stabbed.
once,
Yeah.
Bartholomew
And
rushed in and
that's the
shoulder
reason,
checked
'cause
the
it
suit
was
of armor,
like,
knocking it
This
back.
was difficult. Like
Bartholomew's
I had to
mouth
scale
flailed
down the
open,
difficulty
and with
because I
a
just
roar, he
this is
spewed a
also
black
one of my
Yeah.
first times
cloud
DMing.
across the suit of armor.
So
It
Yeah.
began to corrode. And
Yeah, I
moments
remember
later,
playing
it
this
lied
part,
empty
even though it was
in
like
pieces
late
street.
in the session.
Christopher quickly turned back to the other
Um,
suit of armor and threw his
That
shield
it was
out,
extremely.
attempting to knock
I
him
don't think
back.
it was just Hamilton that
But
went
as he
down.
did,
I feel
the
like two
armor
or three of
ducked
us went
and
down.
kicked
Oh, yeah,
Christopher
it was.
and Hamilton
It was.
flat
Yeah.
on the ground. The armor raised his sword.
I think
and as it fell towards
one of the
Christopher's
things
head,
that was
Christopher
really
pulled
cool
the
about
shield
this
atop
was that if you
him,
pay attention to the
painfully
way it
absorbing the
happens, because
brunt of the blow.
it does
And as
flow
he
really
lifted
well
his
with like
sword
the
from the
combat
shield,
back and
there was a
forth.
flash,
But
and
what I
Benedict
did
speared
like
the
about
armor
whenever
aside, knocking him flat on
Hamilton
the ground.
realized what
He
happened,
sunk his scimitar
the only
deep
thing that you
into the
saw
chest
was
of the
the
armor,
a hand,
but it
and
appeared
it
to be
showed
nothing.
like instead of it being
The armor
like
shook and
someone
began
pulled
to
a sword
lift,
out of him,
just
it was
as Benedict
like
began
he
to
watched
roll
like
off
the
left,
the blood
a
and the
shadow
steel
covered
just get
him,
further
and
from
a
his
loud
face
thud.
instead of it just being like
Bartholomew's
stabbed.
mighty foot
He
crushed
watched the
the
after
armor.
effects,
Mhm.
and then like as
Of it
his
coming
vision just
out,
like
yeah.
went blurry,
Turned to
and then
Hamilton
like he
in an
fell
instant,
over. But then it's
outstretched
like
his hand, and began
there's
to
like this
pray.
battle between like
Hamilton,
Topher
move.
and
Blinded by your
Benedict,
love for
like as
Brandy.
you're like
Benedict
shield,
shouted
bringing
as
your
he
shield,
looked at him.
and it's just
Nice.
Bartholomew both
There was a
times
bright
just
light,
steps in and just
and at
beats
the
the
hands of
living
Christopher,
shit out of
the
his
wounds
things.
began to mend, and the blood stopped
You know,
flowing.
knowing what we know
Hamilton was
now
healed,
about
not
Hamilton,
even
we
a
should have
scar.
just left him
He
to
stood,
die.
looked at
Yeah.
his brother, and
I was
said,
gonna say, what a
And if I
mistake.
didn't have a
Hindsight
reason
is
to drink, I'd
2020,
do
man.
The group
Yeah,
poured
yeah.
slowly into the bar and took their
But how
tables.
much did that
Not
comment
seeing
sound
the
like
dwarven
Jed?
woman, the group
Jed
ordered
literally
drinks
is
in
running to the
time.
bar, gets stabbed,
Hamilton,
almost
at the
dies,
bar
gets
ordering
revived,
dipped his
gets
hand
up, and
into
he's
his
like,
pouch and
well,
grabbed
if I
a few
didn't have a
gold
reason to
pieces
drink
to pay for
before, I
his
do
ale.
now. And then
As his
proceeds
brother
to
Yep.
the
rolled
bar.
coins, a
Yep.
smile
Yep.
worked his way over his
Yeah, your
face.
writing on this stuck really close to
Bartender?
him for sure.
No
I
doubt.
think that drinks are on the house for everyone in the bar.
Dude, this whole part,
Hamilton's other
like I
hand was on his
referenced
quarterstaff,
before
and for a
about how
brief moment,
Zach
the
turned into a
bartender,
baboon,
a slender,
this was
elderly
whenever
man,
he did that.
stared at him.
Mhm.
We were in the
He
bar,
were
and it was
contesting his
so
statement. Moments
like
passed.
it's fun to
But
mess
Hamilton
around in
remained
D&D.
firm,
Like that's what makes
and he
D&D
raised his
great
glass
is that
and
you
took
can
a
just do
drink.
whatever you want to.
The
But the
bartender
level that
squinted
he
his
took
eyes,
it
and then a smile shot
was
over
the
his
most
face.
frustrating
if he were
experience
suddenly
of playing
charmed.
D&D.
A stressful day
It
has
was-
been by all
Well, see that
Oh my
that's what
gosh.
makes it even funnier though, because he was obviously he was really drunk, like by the time
Yeah,
this
yeah,
happened.
yeah.
But it was so bad
As
that
he was
even
turning,
he
he
was
suddenly
like,
stopped,
"Guys, I'm really
looked back at the
sorry."
bartender.
Even on his birthday, like this is his birthday
yeah.
present. Like
Yeah.
he still was like, "I'm so sorry, I ruined
The
this for you
bartender,
guys."
charmed,
Yeah.
smiled and agreed as he handed
Oh,
Hamilton
man.
all the money the bar had made that night. Hamilton swiped the box from the hands of the bartender, shot him a wink, and then walked back to the table.
Classic
He dumped the
Hamilton.
money out, and
There
the
was
party divided
there was
it
another
amongst
one of
themselves.
those sections right there
Christopher
where it was like
struggled for
I've
a bit,
used the
but ultimately
word
decided that he
charmed,
committed no crime
like
by
he was
taking
very
money that was handed
charming
to
or
him for
something like
free.
that. And it's
Yeah.
like if
Four
you're a
raised
D
their
and D
glasses and
person, you're like,
toasted
ah,
their
that's
life.
what took place
And
there.
just as the glasses
Yep.
touched,
So
the air went still.
Subtext.
The sound stopped.
this is actually where I
was
stopped.
no
This
laughing,
might be one of my
no
favorite things
dancing,
in the first 5 episodes.
movement.
This segment where Francis talks and like where they're all like sitting there in the circle and like the way that the music hits right at the end. It's just
They heard the bar door swing open,
Daniel killed
and
it.
in walked the dwarven lady.
A funny story about
She
the
made her way
music.
across the bar
This
table and sat in the chair next to
music right
Christopher.
here was the
The four
original
of them
intro
stared at her,
music,
appalled and shocked by
and
what
the
was
outro
happening.
music.
They had never witnessed.
Or no,
such
this is the
magic.
outro music. This was the original
The
intro
lady
music,
made
and the
herself
original
comfortable
or the
next to
intro music that you
Christopher.
hear now during the
Francis
previously
is my
ons
name, and
was
I will
the
be
rough
brief.
draft of
For
this
magic
song.
of this magnitude
But it
is all
works
but
so
sustainable.
well
It did.
She struggled for her
for
breath.
beginning because it
You
doesn't
have
hit
all
as
been
hard, but
visited
it's got that
tonight
same
by a
feeling.
terror
It's the
in
same.
some
It's the same
form or
song
another,
essentially.
and it is for the
Um,
same reason
I
I was
sat
able
for
to
days
place
and just
you
wrote
in
it,
the
something that
crowds
was
this
like
morning,
a little bit
and why
darker
you
and
all
stuff.
met each other in the
But it was
fashion
all
you
that
have.
was also my
You
first
are
time
bound
doing
in
a song
blood.
that wasn't
She threw out her hand,
like
and in the
a,
center of
a
the
song
table,
with
there
like
was a
guitars
glowing
and
red light
drums
that
and
slowly lifted
you know all
from
this
the
crazy
beneath
stuff.
the
It was
glass.
like this
A red
needs to
skull
fit what
with
we are
9
doing
droplets
in
of
this
blood
campaign,
dancing around it.
and I think it turned out pretty well.
Hamilton
Like I
knew
really
the
like it.
sigil from his time
Heck yeah.
studying the deities of old.
How much time did I spend
This was the
badgering
symbol
you
of
about
being
that too?
forgotten.
Like with the music, I'm like, no. At the end of the episode, I remember so many
Yeah.
conversations. Like at the end of the episode,
Ball was only
it needs to
known
have
for
like a.
defeat,
I didn't know how to
rage,
say what I was trying to
what
say.
he was
Like a,
Yeah.
a
capable of
big
passing
moment
the
where
ball
it's like
onward.
something happens and it's like,
Except
dun,
by
and then the
studying
episode
Yeah.
ends.
the ancient
How many? How
Yep.
much? How many times that I was like, this has to be there. This fucking has to be there.
I
That's
probably
hilarious.
cursed you out multiple
All is
times.
returning.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know what you're saying.
Changes
Probably
the
still
world.
will on the issue. Like that. Let's not put to rest quite yet.
Seals that banished him, for they must be destroyed if he wishes
I'm
to
not a
return.
musically talented person, so anytime
You
I'm
have
asking
been
Daniel
visited,
for something
then
music,
whatever the
like I
reason
want it to
may
sound
be,
like this, and
you are
and I just use like the dumbest words to
Like it.
describe it.
I'm like, I have no clue what you're saying. Like,
there's
give me an
jargon.
example.
A lot of jargon with everything in there.
But the creatures
Yeah.
found him first.
Dude, I was about to say, like,
That
between
child was
recording,
the last blood of the demigod
producing, listening,
Goddess
doing the
of the
music for it,
outcast.
like the intro and outro
Her
songs,
blood was
the
spewed
time that we spent,
centuries ago on
the
far
listening,
plains during the
changing
great battles
things,
of the
Mhm.
last age.
re-listening.
But in her final act,
I would
she created the
honestly
first
put
of
money
the
on that
9
there's
seals,
over
the
250
Risen
hours that went into
the
just this
last of the
episode.
blood now lay
Wow.
Like
I don't
easily.
doubt that.
in an unworthy
Wow.
grave.
Like it's
Christopher's stomach
insane.
turned
Like
as he
thinking
thought
about it,
of
because I
this.
know for a fact
His
that I
mind
put
was
in over
racing,
80
because
hours
he had so many
just
questions,
building the
but
episode.
no way to verbalize
That
them.
doesn't include like any of the recording
As the
time
9
or anything
seals
like
were
that.
crafted, so his
Dang.
power diminished.
I'm gonna cast time stop,
And
my
on the
last
final
one
day of the last
Okay.
age,
right here.
gods and man alike suffered a
This-
terrible blow.
This part here where he's talking about, or Francis is talking about like selling and the seals and like what she thinks is happening. I just think it's interesting that like because this is where she tells you like the dwarven lady, the child was like the last blood and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And this like if you remember later on where it harkens back to where I was able to use this in the campaign, because that's like it's a challenge when you're writing these things to say like you want to go into like tremendous detail. The biggest challenge I have is writing NPCs, because it's like I want to put NPCs in here and I want you guys to have interactions with these people, not because it's like that they're part of the story, quote unquote, but it's you don't know when they will be part of the story. So like I need to put in random people, because if you come across someone and you never see them again, you don't even think about it. But if you
Mhm.
come across someone, then you happen upon them again, you're like, oh, that's that dude from before. So it's
Yeah.
interesting when you're writing, especially in the case of Gwent. It's like I want to introduce, consequences for your actions. So it's like you stole all this guy's money and you fucking left, and the next time you saw him, he's like,
Yeah.
guards, those are the
He's
people that took all
pissed.
my money and shut
Yep.
down my business. So it's like
Mm.
Continuity.
it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult when I'm writing this like at like pen paper, trying to put these situations together. One, to not go into too much detail because you guys are dicks and you derail everything that I do, and two, going into just enough detail to where if you happen to meet people, that those people can work their ways back in, because that's probably the best part about D&D is like when a good story connects from an angle you didn't see it connecting, and you get a hook from another angle too. It's like I did not see how all these things connected together.
Yep.
And that's probably the toughest part. And this is just one of those situations with, Selen and Gwent and all these people that have popped back up later on that I'm hoping that people are seeing and are able to enjoy them. So,
So let me ask you one question.
wait,
Is
you
it
zone
harder-
truthing me right now?
is- No, because this is is it harder? Is that harder, or actually naming your NPCs harder.
That's why I laughed as soon as he said, I really like to have NPCs. And as soon as you introduce an NPC, I'm like, hi, sir, what is your name? And you're like,
Well,
fuck,
you guys,
I have all of his stats. I have everything, but I didn't think of a damn name.
Names are like one of those things where it's like you guys have probably seen Ted Lasso, and even outside of Ted Lasso, where they're like you say a word and then you say it like 9 times and then it
Oh,
stops
yeah.
sounding like a word.
I know what you mean.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that all the time
Yeah.
with names. I'm like, okay, I want this guy's name to like when Gwent, and I was like Gwent. I was like, now it just
Well,
sounds like
originally, like if you
Shut up.
listen to the episodes, his name is Quint with a Q, and
Yeah.
somehow it morphed into
Quint.
Gwent.
Nice.
because we're all lazy and inconsistent.
You know,
Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? We don't know.
It might be daylight savings time.
okay,
Raval
you
did
can.
not succeed without sending many to the afterlife. His servants have hid in the
This is my
shadows
favorite
for
part.
hundreds of years, and now the seals are.
I think this
awakening
is my
as they
favorite
begin to
part
break.
up in any of the episodes
One
up
by one,
until
his
episode
servants hunt for them,
12 at the end with
and
the
as
fight
they
with the
break,
dragon
Oh my
and
gosh.
more of his evil will
that
be
that
released
whole
on this
ending
world.
sequence is like my favorite in
stops,
this whole show
And the
probably.
skull
It's
disappears
so
from the
good.
center of the table.
So good.
She looks around.
I'm so proud of us for
studying
that.
The faces
Like-
of the 4.
Proud of you for that.
For whatever reason, you
Oh, you
have
know.
been chosen.
I sent it to you, then you told me
Baal
to change stuff,
cannot
so
be
it's
let
it's
free.
kind of a back and forth type of thing.
For his wrath would see
Hey,
the
hey.
world's end.
Here it is. You hear it start? I heard it.
Bartholomew sat staring at Francis, while his mind
Yep.
filled with questions.
This is like
about his
telltale.
studies.
You hear that, and it's like, no,
There
the
were so
episode's
many
ending.
things he
Stop.
could not piece together.
Yeah.
Why did he feel at such unease?
How many times have you guys
Bartholomew
listened to these
recalled
episodes and just like,
all
I'm
the
so
sins he
into
had
the
committed,
episode, even though I already
and
know
all
what's
the horrible
happening, and I
things he
hear
had
that
done,
play, I'm like, no.
And the atonement.
I'm
he
curious
sought.
to the people, if there's anyone else out there watching, how many
Many
times have
sins
you
I have
listened to the
committed in my
episode
past.
and you're into it and you hear the music
It
and
is
you're
to
like,
be
God, no,
decided
it
that
can't
this
be
is how
over,
my
stop.
penance must
And
be
you like
paid.
check the amount of time left.
So be it.
I know there for a
Francis
while
laughed.
the music didn't start till the episode
my
ended.
friend.
I'm pretty
She
sure
stopped
I
and
was
smirked.
dumb and did that for a few
Bravery
episodes.
such as yours
at
is
the
an
beginning.
uncommon sight. But a
And there's
life
some
such as
episodes where I'm
yours-
just an ass.
She glared at
So if
Benedict.
somebody's just listening to it, not paying attention, and the episode just ends. The music's not even there because something crazy's happening, and it's just poof, done, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yep.
Francis stood to her feet.
I do
Like,
that to mess
I-
with people
I think-
listening.
The door.
Yeah. I don't want to
Dragon?
disclose too much at a time.
Follow your
love
divine sense.
This part, because like,
It will
especially the
serve you
divine
well.
sense thing,
The noble
like,
will have
and then
you
because
for
she
it.
just
Whoops.
addressed
With
everyone,
that, she lifted her hand
and then
snapped her
like
fingers, and the bar
people
came
need
back
an
to life
appreciation
around
for how powerful Francis really is.
She was
She
gone.
stopped time.
There,
Literally
Yeah.
walked in and
in the
was like,
center of
everything's
Francis'
done.
hand,
Like, listen to me
stood
right
4
now.
souls,
And this
all
part right here is just
distraught,
my favorite.
all
So good.
distraught, and all unprepared for what appeared to be their fated divine entanglement.
That shit slaps right there. It's so good.
Mm.
It's so good.
Was this
Gotta love
whenever
it.
we were still adding those clips at the very end? This episode is brought to you by 13 Palm Trees Podcast
I think
Productions.
so.
Check us out
Maybe.
online at 13palmtrees.
Yeah, it is.
This
Here it is.
podcast has been brought to you by 13 Palm Trees
Yeah.
Podcast Productions.
Shameless
Check us out online
self-promotion
at
for one of my songs right there
13palmtrees.com.
behind that.
Listen, it was. I remember when we were working on these, and we were like, we're gonna call them charms, and you, Ryan, you had set up the
I've made a few of them.
yeah, and you had set up the Dropbox and everything. And I remember when you first shared it, I opened it up and I was on my phone and I was in the middle of Walmart, and I played it, and it was like, this episode's brought to you by 13 Palm Trees, and I was watching it, and I literally went, huh, nice, and I looked up, and there was this old lady that was just giving me like the worst stink eye because I was standing in the middle of the aisle where she was trying to get through with her cart, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
That's hilarious.
Corey says, I do enjoy how she drops all this backstory, and you were all like instantly, yes, I'm in 100%.
You gotta realize that we
Not
were
a single
hammered
person was like,
in
"Dude,
real
fuck
life.
this."
You know,
True.
we were all hammered in real life, so we were all just like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we probably would have been that way anyway, but you know, that would have been a great out for Jed there. He could have been like, "Nah, I'm good," and then we wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. but,
Right.
you know.
That's how it
He's just
happens.
too
See,
busy.
Michael, do you want to get to his question?
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions here.
nice.
The first one that Corey brought to the table, the fake Gumby, otherwise known as Corey. The first one
Hey,
was,
Corey.
during episode 1, all of you were attacked and left alive. Then this old dwarven lady brings you all together. Did any of you even remotely feel that she was the one that directed those attacks? It's a great question. This
No.
is, I think, again, I shouldn't be the one answering this question, but I think Daniel, you kind of touched on it earlier, where it's one of those things where it's like when you're playing and you're in the moment, you don't think about certain things.
Yeah.
But go ahead, I'll let you guys take these.
Yeah, I think that's how it was. It was more like, okay, we had been playing and all of this story has been developing and everything was happening. And like, I know that listening to it in this format where you didn't actually hear the gameplay, but we had been going for hours by the point that we got to the Brandy's Main, and there wasn't any fighting or anything like that. So to me as a player, whenever we got to that point, it was like, oh, this is our first fight. I'm so excited for it. Like it was more of like an emotional D&D player than me really playing into my character, because it was like, sweet, we've been playing for hours and I've yet to roll a dice. Can I please fight something? You know, so it never really, that's a good point though. Like, thinking back on it, like,
I
did she
think
put this there to test us?
I think from a
Or-
story perspective, though, one critical element to add to this question, and I hope it doesn't derail the question too much. The point in time in the story where, and when we played in D&D, where we went from the, where everyone was attacked, pretty sure we started playing at the point in time where the audience got together.
Yeah.
So the parts where Topher had interactions with Francis were actually written in without actually being played out. So Topher, up to the point of the time where they met her again, had no knowledge of her when we actually played. So it might be a little different had like Daniel actually had played the part out where he interacted with Francis right there, but that was all scripted to give the story more life and give reason for Topher being where he was at that point in time. So it's a good question that actually brings up more backstory on how everything was put together. So I do think that if that could have changed the way Topher potentially saw that if he had experienced that, and then this lady had been there and he actually played that out, but that ultimately was not the intention, obviously, as you found out now. So
yeah, and as a new player, in a new campaign, you're a new player into D&D in general. I don't think I had the foresight to analyze what was happening to any capacity of depth. So it was really just looking at things from face value. And yeah, I think to answer your question, yes, there were times where it'd been like, yeah, this Karen chick, she's got something else going on. And like
Karen.
I colloquially refer to her as Karen all the time.
She is not Francis. She is Karen.
She is Karen.
You've been calling her that, like, literally.
Exactly.
since
I'm
the
staying
first
true.
episode.
I'm staying true. No, but
Well, you also
I
have to think, like, how long was it? Okay, so prefaces. How long was it between whenever we played the first episode, or played this episode here at Zach's, and whenever we recorded? Like, how long?
the
of a time
second
frame was
it
that?
was it was a good amount of time. I think
Yeah.
it was a very good amount of time.
Yeah, I feel like it was.
I don't think it was.
I think it was 6 months.
I don't think it was that long. I think we did that.
I think it
and-
was
and then
because
a
we
few
wanted
weeks-
we wanted to publish, I think, right as we were about to go to a convention. And we
did,
ramped
but we
up
had already-
our first publishing deadline was ramped up right, and that was in August. And we recorded initially for whose birthday, which was in February.
It was in
We never-
February,
we-
but remember we did that one, and then a few weeks later we reconvened at my place, and then it was 5 or 6 months later because remember there was that big gap between my house where we got 2 and 3 done, and then when we went to Daniel's house when he was living with Madison, and
That's
then we
right.
didn't use that content because Zach showed up like 4 hours late.
Yeah.
Yeah,
guys,
there's a whole-
6 and it's 10:30.
That
Yeah.
that whole that's another thing, is like that whole frog statue thing happened in an episode that never got published because Zach showed up so late and was just so not involved anymore, and hence the transition between him and Josh. Like,
Yeah.
it it didn't flow well because I think that me, Michael, Ryan, and Jed were all so frustrated because he said he was going to be there at this time and didn't show up, and it didn't help, or it literally made the content just unusable. It wasn't good.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
and then
when you literally
we all-
you load tables, you got dozens of cables hooking up all the power, hooking up microphone stands, setting up the computer, getting the interface ready. There's a lot of logistics involved in recording a 5-man podcast for a live D&D session, and putting that level of effort into something, and someone giving you a commitment saying, "Yeah, I'll be there," and then them not doing that. I mean, that is a deal breaker. So, there's nothing we can do about that. But we made the right decision. Looking back, I wouldn't have made it any different.
Well, it just goes into talking about even outside of the bounds of like who was involved, getting into that headspace, because even if he had
Exactly.
been 2 hours late, we're all just, regardless, we don't want to present any content. And it speaks to like our level and standards that we have for our content. We were not willing, even though we were all there, we were, for all intents and purposes, we were ready to record. But we knew if we did this, there would be a tone. There would be something that people would be able to pick out of that content that just would
wasn't good.
not be 100%.
Yeah.
So, but any
plus
other
that space wasn't good for recording either. It was really
not.
echoey.
Hardwood floors are life ruiners for studio recording. I swear.
Yeah.
The next
You said there
question
was
was next question was a question from Ryan Turner that says, "Can we get some Dungeon Master Rule 34?" So that's Patreon exclusive content, my friend. You gotta pay for that. But there was another question.
I
go
did.
ahead.
Okay, so I did make on Hero Forge. I did make a Gwent statue of him with his scrolls,
Nice.
with white stuff all over the scrolls. And he's naked. So if you'd like to see that, I'll post it in the D&D kind of Discord.
We'd like to see that.
Okay. All right.
The other question, also
I think I still have it.
from the fake
better.
Gumby Corey, was at me. Was there anything that inspired you to write this story? So it's a tough question because there's been a lot of inspiration. So overall, the biggest credit I'd have to give to Levi. So Levi Sutherland, a friend of ours,
Nice.
ran a D&D campaign for us that still technically hasn't finished, but it was me, Daniel, and Jed.
Nice.
And I played oh my goodness, Thalidra. Thalidra was I was an elf ranger.
Wait, was
Daniel's
this when you guys
way-
turned someone into a balloon?
Yeah, we
Later
turned Jed
on,
into
it
a
was.
balloon.
Yeah.
Nice.
The balloon just carried him.
I've heard stories from that campaign. It sounded funny.
But then Daniel, I don't remember what your character's name was.
My name
Oh.
was Hefe Womb Raider, and I was a dwarf druid.
Oh, jeez.
And Jed played a very flamboyantly homosexual bard named Samash. And
Shamash, yeah.
his signature move was sticking his fingers up people's butts. And and this is why I wanted to do what we did, because regardless of just the ridiculous, stupid scenarios that we threw at Levi, he tanked right through it, and I could only dream to be as good of a DM as Levi was.
Nice.
Because while we're playing, that there's side conversations, there's things we've gotten into the fights and arguments and all the crap that that goes on. We had it's probably about 2-hour fight over how we look at a freaking map, from like the episode 6 to 8 range, and it's just little things like that. But in those like moments of doubt, I would just think back to like Levi and be like, he wouldn't have done this. He would. This is how he would handle it.
You've really leaned on Levi for your mental, emotional support preparedness for being able to do a standing 12-foot jump.
I mean, if you could show me you doing a standing 12-foot jump, I'll let someone that weighs 300 pounds more than you do it too. So,
Challenge
Anyway.
accepted.
That was another big one. Whew, I'm sure
Yeah.
some people heard about that one.
Yeah.
But some of my other inspirations outside of Levi definitely is what got me into D&D because it was D&D has that stigma, It's like before you try it, it's like it's I'll never try D&D, but that's just too nerdy for me. But then you try D&D and you're like, well, thank God there's LARPing too. Now I can just use that as my fault.
I'm never gonna do LARPing. That shit's for the birds.
Yeah, but so actually trying it and have someone there that I do respect as a person and really look up to be like, dude, this is cool, let me guide you in it.
Yeah.
And I had a blast, so I got a big shout out to him for that. But then what really cemented it for me was whenever I listened to the Adventure Zone for the first time. I've just never heard storytelling like that, and this in an avenue where other people are involved in creating a story while they're living the story. It just really resonated with me. I was like, this is just something that I absolutely must be a part of. Nice. And then finding people that I know that are creative and interesting, and I know can bring certain characters to life in a way that I wouldn't be able to imagine them. Because I know that when we put this together, it wasn't just about, for me, the people that I invited to play. It wasn't just about the people that I knew. It was about people that I knew that were charismatic and interesting. Because Ryan, think about it, that was their first night meeting Zach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I invited you, was because I knew you were fun and interesting and charismatic, and you could tell stories and you could speak well. And so, and it really goes into show how much work goes into a campaign, because you need to be able to tell those stories. And that's why I get frustrated whenever I tell Josh, like, hey, you have no character, like Benedict. And it's not a secret. I'm not trying to talk shit on Josh. He plays a different style character. He's very brutish, and that's how his character comes across in the story. So it's fun. But whenever we're telling these stories, it helps having people who are interested in that role playing aspect. And that's I don't care for D&D where it's all fighting. So hearing that and come across an Adventure Zone was a big inspiration. And then story wise, it's interesting because people were like, there's a predefined world for D&D, but the best thing about D&D is being able to tell your own story and taking it and twist it and bend it in the way you want. If I want Mishkal to be a dude, then fuck your rules. Mishkal is going to be a guy. I don't care.
Yeah.
So that's what's so nice about it. So
aptly named.
Yes, absolutely. So things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and other inspirations, and it never is just a glimpse inside my mind when I'm writing these stories. It's never something where I'm like, I take this situation and I write it. The 9 seals came from that photo. I don't know if you guys had the photo that you can kind of see it on the stream here, that skull. I was like, well, that's ominous as fuck. I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna just say there's 9 of them. I know that I think there's 12 on that image.
Yeah,
but
there's
just
actually 12 in the lore. Yeah.
Yeah, but the arbitrary number I just chose and then wrote the lore based on that, because that's anything good starts with an idea, and then the expansion of the story, regardless of how it seems, has all been based on how the story has progressed. Because as a DM, you can't take and write a full story and people play it. It just doesn't work, and it never will. So everything that's happened has been a soul progression as to where we're at. Even up to where the point where Benedict died, all the way in the later episodes. It's like that sequence of events that took place inside of his head before he came back to life. That was all because crafted around me taking that back to the table and saying, okay, where has Benedict been? Where is he at now? What has he experienced? And putting together this amalgamation of something that also ties to where the story is headed from your guys' perspective as well. So it might not seem like it because it's a grand tapestry the way you guys are looking at it, but the intricate threads that you have to weave to make that story come to life, it's so hard to sit here and just look at paper and write it down. So again, big shout out to just every fantasy epic that I've ever been a part of, because without those, I would have no inspiration whatsoever. So, and ultimately Levi. So, long-winded answer to a very short question. I apologize.
It's very hard. Something that I was you mentioned something about the grand scheme of everything and stuff. I produce everything. So at the end of the sessions, whenever it comes to recording, I have to sit down with typically like 7 hours of content and go through that and edit it down into an episode. And I've noticed myself at times reading too much into certain situations and asking Michael, I'm like, is especially with the thing that Chryslix was wearing whenever I had to leave during my backstory episode, I think episode 6. It was very similar to the things that the Lokar's symbol, like it was the same color. And I was reading so much into that at that point, and I was like,
I remember that.
is Chrysalix working for Lokar? Like, should I be worried? Because, you know, it's got all this Mishkal stuff. Like, is he killing people that are followers of Mishkal? And he starts coming back around, and it's like, it kind of plays into how you really feel about these characters. And it's really hard for me to not look too deep into stuff, because I am, like, each episode, like, I've listened to, I mean, hundreds of times just from editing and, you know, and stuff. So it's really, and it's hard to, a lot of times it's really hard to get like back into that headspace of playing. Like if we were on like a time crunch where it's like we have to record because this is the last episode that I just finished and we have to record this weekend to get the next episode out. After listening to an episode for so long and like and editing it and doing all this stuff, it's hard for me to get back into that, because I'm not looking at it as Topher, I'm looking at it as a producer. And I know that we've gotten into fights before and after sessions before where I'm like, we need to stop doing this and stop doing this and stop doing this because this is really hard in post-production and all this stuff. And it's like, but eventually it's just like, I had to like let it all go. It's like, it's going to go how it's going to go. And if there's a hour-long just hoopla about cheeseburger pizzas from Papa John's, then so be it. But it's going to have to be there, and I'm going to have to sift through it. It's just part of the job. Like, and it took me a really long time to get out of that and to actually focus. Just like, okay, we're sitting down to record. I've got to be in Topher mode and not focus on this person doing this and that person doing that. And you know, it was it's definitely a process. There's a lot of fights that have happened. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that probably will never be shown the light of day. But
I think Topher, you
fun.
Resonating with that first question about how you felt when you first experienced these things, like it makes a lot of sense for Topher, because you know you didn't have any experience to go based on, so your imagination could literally, it was open-ended, and you had to think of what everything could be. and you owned that, and that has to be tough for Topher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really think that everyone, I mean, throughout the course, especially with this episode, it's really framing where we're going with this, and we're trekking through episode 1, and I had a great time tonight with this one, and I'm excited to do more. But I'm excited to also see as this progresses beyond episode 1, and everyone watching, and hopefully all the people that will watch, they get to, 1, get more involved, but 2, also get to see the journey that we took mentally, and ultimately the things that might even come back to light. And I think that, you know, not just with Topher, and hopefully we can get, you know, Benedict and, you know, Hamilton on here at different points in time as well, but just to watch and progress the journey that we actually take, not just, you know, together through this, but also like your individual characters. So this has been an absolute blast. So just one last question to round this out, end with a fun one here. We got one more. So we got to do with every member of the party, just with you two since you're here. We're gonna do fuck, marry, kill. You got the other 3 party members. You got to choose one to F, one to kill, and one to marry. Which ones are you taking? Then I'll close us out on that one.
I'll let you go first, because I think everybody knows like my answer. So,
well, everyone knows the kill. Not everyone knows it. So, you want me to go first? I'll go first.
I mean, well, does that work?
From, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because I have 4 to choose from. So
just add like a brutally torture.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. Well, then that might change my kill, honestly.
I mean, you know.
All right. So if I had to This is tough. Okay, so I'm gonna kill Hamilton. I'm going to marry Bartholomew because he's just an absolute manly man, and I'm gonna fuck Topher because use a bitch, and that's gonna be the closest thing to a female. Get out of
And I've got the longest hair in the party, so
All right, Ryan.
I think an Eldritch Blast might taste good. I'm gonna fuck Hamilton. I'm gonna marry Benedict because you won't have to put up with much character, and and I'm gonna kill Topher.
wow, dude. Wow, man. Let's see. So I'd probably bang Bartholomew.
You like them big dragons, huh?
I like the big dragonborns.
Mm-hmm.
I would
brown dragon's
marry.
not a type, but I guess he's gonna find out what a brown dragon's like.
So, as of right now, from where the story has progressed, I would marry Hamilton because me and him are actually pretty tight knit at this point in the campaign. Like, not episode 1, but episode like 40, whatever we're on.
I need to take
We're
some
actually
notes here real
pretty
quick.
nice. And I would kill Benedict.
Wow, that didn't go how I thought it was gonna go at all.
Yeah, everyone got to fuck, everyone got to marry, and everyone got to kill.
As much crap as we give Hamilton, like obviously, like him and me have this bond now. Like we've been,
you guys lighting
been
and
through a
spider
bit,
climbing each
so-
other is getting a little bit weird.
Yeah, it just happens. So,
I'm gonna light you. Oh no, I'm gonna spider climb you. Oh, I'm lighting the fuck out of you next week, buddy. It's you and
Jump on
fucking
my
Hamilton.
backpack, daddy.
All
All
right.
right, well, that was a good one.
This has
Thanks
been a
for-
hell of an
thanks
episode,
for-
guys. Thanks for doing this.
Yep. Thank you,
Episode
guys.
2 is watch for social media. We'll announce when the next go live event is, and
Yep.
we'll tackle episode 2.
I don't think we want to get on any type of specific schedule because we don't want to set any expectations. This content's always going to be out there,
Yeah.
so we'll get to it when we get to it. And
Yeah, it is kind of nice. I think just something to mention on is that this is a good way for us to be able to create content from our homes and talk about where we've been and where we're at in our headspace.
Mm-hmm.
So it just not having a schedule and just being able to hop on here and listen to an episode, and then we'll have a library of these on YouTube here in a few months or a few years. So it'll be fun to do with you guys. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, I'm excited. Thank you guys for tuning in. And
Tell your
don't forget
friends.
that if you're in the
Don't
D&D
have
kind
any.
of Discord, I posted that Gwent miniature that I made with him and the scrolls. Which if
Nice.
you've listened to enough D&D, you've definitely heard the Jizz scrolls and
Mhm.
stuff. So check that out. I'm very proud of myself, and thank you.
We're proud of you too,
Thank-
Daniel. Thank you all for
thank
joining
you
us
for the-
tonight.
Yeah.
Everyone have a good night.